Because we want to start talking about this idea. One of the things we did when we started this topic, this series, we called it Reorganized Religion. And the reason we called it that is because the idea of organized religion often causes us to bristle a little bit. And the truth is that it causes us to bristle a little bit when we're either if you're part of the church and you've been in the church for a long time, or if you are just kind of exploring and checking things out. Even Jesus seemed to be kind of pushing against what we would describe as organized religion, those religious leaders at the time. And so we started this series with this idea that, how do we sort of work through what the church is supposed to be about? Because a lot of people look at the church and they say, the church is just kind of some sort of relic from a bygone era. It's just something that happened a long time ago, but it's not really relevant in my life today. A lot of people that we would come across would say, I'm interested in God, I'm interested in spirituality, but I just don't think the church really has a place in my life. And so we talked about this idea of beginning a series that was about the church, and we called it Reorganized Religion because we wanted to talk about what we do here. And you wouldn't be surprised, obviously, we're going to say that what we do here matters. And I hope that over the last number of weeks, you've been really kind of tracking with us as we've been looking at this. Now, this is a do-over today. This was this was meant to be the Sunday morning that we got snowed out, and I'm not sure if there's a reason behind that or not, but we're going to go ahead with this and share a little bit about music. So we've asked Dave. I've asked Dave to come and join us because obviously he's a pastor here responsible for music and leads the teams that are around us. And we're not just going to hear from Dave this morning. We're also going to hear from some of our musicians. So they're going to kind of hang out here with us because what we do here really, truly matters. Mm-hmm. And this is, we're just going to talk this morning all about music.
Yeah.
So
music has been a part of the church since the very beginning. And we have done something which is pretty normal for us. We've just sung 3 songs together, right? And that's pretty normal. It's what you'd expect when you come to church. And if you stop and think about it a minute, it's also really strange in a way. It used to be that singing was a part of everyday society. And while we experience more music in any given day now because of the wonders of technology and music is played everywhere, singing has become something in society that's reserved for a few small groups. Those who love karaoke, right? For those right moments in a big sporting event, and the few who think they can become the next American Idol.
That's right.
Families 100 years ago would gather around the resonance of an upright piano in their voices, and today we gather around the glow of the flat screen and Netflix. Yeah. It's just how things have changed. Despite its decline in broader culture, the church has kept on singing.
Right, and it's a little strange when we think about it. And so one of the questions we've asked is, why do we do it? And this morning, one of the questions that I think is often asked is, what's with all the singing? Why do we sing when we gather together? And, singing is important when it comes to our faith. It's not only important when it comes to our faith, it's also important when it comes to our growth. And not only that, I think that, singing is important when it comes to God's plan for us, too. And I don't know, it doesn't matter whether you're a good singer or not a good singer. You guys sound awesome on a Sunday morning, and that's great. But whether you can sing or not is not really the point. When we come together, singing is so crucial to us. It's not only important for what we do here on Sunday. When we talk about this today, I hope you'll understand that singing is also important for what happens for the rest of the week, from Monday to Friday, because there's, it's something that sustains us as well.
Yeah, singing together is a gift that we've been given. In the same way that the church is this thing that God set up for us, it's a gift for us, because God in all of his wisdom said, I'm not going to leave you on your own. I'm going to bring you together and give you some of the tools you need, some of the practices you need to follow me every day. And I think singing falls into that category. It's not just a nice thing to do. Now, obviously, some of you are sitting there thinking, yeah, but Dave's a musician. Of course he thinks that. And I love music. It's true. I really enjoy singing together and doing music. But biblically speaking, I think music and singing is crucial to a growing faith. The Psalms are full of passages that call us to sing joyfully or to sing a new song. And the New Testament also calls us to this. Ephesians 5:18-19 encourages us. Do not get drunk on wine, which leads to debauchery. Instead, be filled with the Spirit, speaking to one another with psalms, hymns, and songs from the Spirit. Sing and make music in your heart to the Lord.
Yeah, and so singing really is a gift, and it's crucial to our growth as followers of Jesus Christ. And actually, an account that really sort of grabbed my attention when I started thinking about this topic is an account from the book of Acts. And if you've got your Bibles with you this morning, you can open them up. I'm just going to refer back to this account a couple of times. But in Acts chapter 16, it's actually this, it's a story of when Paul and Silas were coming into a place called Philippi. And Philippi was a very eclectic group of believers who were gathered down by the water. And when Paul came and Silas, they went down to the water and they started worshiping with this little church community. And things were going really well. Week after week, they would go down and spend time there with that small group of believers. But in the context of that, all of a sudden, something happened. Paul and Silas had an altercation with a slave girl who was in the street. And when they began to talk to her, when they began to have this conversation, they essentially changed the financial situation for her owners. Yeah. And so things really started to unravel from there. All of a sudden, without a trial, they were convicted of all kinds of things that were trumped up by the people who were making these accusations. They were beaten severely. They were thrown into the darkest place of a Roman jail cell. They were stripped of their clothes, their dignity. They were kind of pushed into this place. And it was dark, and it was hard, and it was a struggle for these two guys. But then something happened. In the middle of the night, these guys, they're not catching up on rest. They're not plotting, against the people who had done all this to them. They began to sing. So imagine that. So in the midst of all of this, with everything that's going on, they're in the darkest part of a jail cell, and they begin to sing and make music. It's kind of unbelievable when you think about it. And so this is what grabbed my attention. And we're going to take up the offering. So I'm going to ask the ushers to come forward. And if you're prepared to give this morning, you can do that. And as we do this, I want you to be thinking about the words to the song that we're going to sing together. A song that you know really, really, really well. Let's sing together. What a great song and a great reminder of who God is. You notice the words weren't upright on that last verse as we sang it together. But as I sat up here, I could hear your voices ringing out. See, one of the questions that we ask is, why do we sing? Because singing helps us remember. Singing helps us remember incredible truths about who God is. And when Paul and Silas were in prison, when they had been beaten and they had nothing left, they had songs in their heart that were reminding them of who God is and who God will always be. You see, that's part of what makes singing so incredible when we sing songs like that. I love that. And sometimes it helps us remember when we need it most. I can remember when I was in youth ministry, one of the things we did when we were there is I wrote down memory verses and we put them into our pocket. There's a couple of people here that were from that youth ministry a long time ago, and I'm sorry. But but Psalm 119:11 says that we've hidden God's word in our hearts. And I said, if we can't memorize scripture, at least we can hide God's word in our pockets. And so we wrote down these scripture verses and we put them in our pockets. Guess what? We carry around truth about God in songs like Amazing Grace. We just sang these words that my chains are gone. We sang these songs that remind us that even though we were once blind, now we can see, and we've been saved by the power of Jesus Christ. And that is absolutely incredible news. So if you're here in grade 4 and 5, you guys can go down and see your teachers there. Thanks for sticking around with us. And you can share that with your teacher as you go down. Remind them that those songs that you guys sing, even in your kids program, are songs that are reminding us over and over again about who God is. No matter how silly the song, they always remind us about those kinds of truth. Yeah.
Singing both helps us memorize truths about God, like we've just done in Amazing Grace, but it also draws out our own memories in unique ways. Let's try a little exercise here. Juicy fruit is gonna. Let's try it again. Juicy fruit is gonna.
I mean, that's crazy. Like, I've never been moved by a piece of gum before. But somehow we all know this, right? I mean, this is kind of truth. It's crazy that sometimes these things stick with us because they're connected to music.
Yeah, we're gonna try one more. If you were here this fall, you might remember this. See if we can get this right. Oh, you're here at church today. You may have come from far away. If I can implore, and please don't ignore, park far, sit close. Yeah, here we go. We'll do another one. Just for. We all want that parking spot, the one with shortest hill and walk. But if you call this home, leave us some space to grow. Park far. Sit close. There you go, right? So we remember this phrase because I put it to a fun little song, right? Can any one of you here tell me the 13th letter of the ABCs? Can you do it without singing the song in your head? Right? This is how we learn. Music has a way of sticking phrases and ideas in our minds better than almost anything else. And I mean this in no offense at all to Paul, but when was the last time you remembered a sermon point? Right?
It's
right.
true.
But when was the last time you went home humming a song? I bet many of you who have been coming here for a while have dozens of songs that you could sing, dozens of ways that these things have just rooted in your heart and mind.
Yeah.
Colossians 3:16 says, "Let the message of Christ dwell in you richly, as you teach and admonish one another with all wisdom through psalms, hymns, and songs from the Spirit, singing to God with gratitude in your hearts." Music helps us remember really important things about who He is and what He's all about. That's why we really care about the songs that we sing together. The truths we proclaim shape us and stick with us. They shape our understanding of who God is, what He has done, what He's doing now in our midst, and what He's going to do. Yeah. Worship is something that I think is much bigger than music. Worship is all of our lives given back to God as a response to what He's done. But the music we sing plays an incredibly important part in our worship because it gets carried with us as we go from church to our jobs, our schools, our neighborhoods, and homes. Songs stick in our memory and remind us of these profound truths when we need them most. Yeah. I'm gonna ask Rebecca to come and join us. Rebecca, you've been here for a while, and I want to ask you: have you ever had a song that has come to you in a moment when you've needed to hear what that song says?
Yeah, totally. You know, the first thing that comes to mind actually is when I was a really little girl, and what you were saying with the memory verses, I had a ton of memory verses put to song, and the video was called Hide 'Em in Your Heart. So
Yes, there you go.
And I was a very scared child. I was just scared of a lot of things, and so the song with the psalm, "When I'm Afraid, I Will Trust in You," would always come to my head. I'd be walking through a dark hallway, and I'd make myself sing it or sing it in my head, and that would pop in my mind. And as time passed, I grew older, became scared of different things than dark hallways. But one song that always really God has brought to my mind is the song "Your Love Never Fails." And if you don't know, the chorus goes, "You stay the same through the ages, your love never changes," and it goes on. And especially starting in university, which can be such an anxious time, so much uncertainty, change, I don't know what's next. I'm going to this violin lesson and I don't know, does my teacher hate me? Will I ever be good enough? So much fear all the time. And to be able to sing that song in my head and like those truths about God, when the world is chaos, His love never changes. It's one thing to be able to pray, but to be able to be like taking the focus off your own problem and onto truths about God and who He is in that moment, on my walk to my violin lesson or my walk home when I'm freaking out, that has just been such a gift.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you. Like, singing helps us remember. That's great. I appreciate it so much. Singing helps us remember so much truth about God, and it can bring back memories as well of something that really important happened. And I think all of us can probably point to a time where you can remember something that happened, and there's a song that kind of triggers that memory of that thing, and it comes up over and over again. in a positive way. Singing truly is a gift. And whether you sing every word with us or not on a Sunday morning, I can almost guarantee that at some point through the week, you will sing part of a song. It'll be in the car. It'll be somewhere on your own in the privacy of just your own little space. Those words kind of come back to us and we sing them out.
Yeah. Sometimes we'll sing songs together to help us remember a promise of God that may not feel true. This is a really important kind of remembering, as it helps us align with true reality. All to Jesus I Surrender, the great hymn, is an example of a song kind of like this. Surrendering to Jesus is a lifelong process that we're all on. None of us is ever fully and completely surrendered to Jesus, but we long for it. We gather together to say, oh Lord, would you help me surrender everything? And as we're reminded of his promises, we sing this to remind us of this reality that we want to live into. Yeah. Another example of a song like this is Blessed Be Your Name, a song that I have sung many times on a Sunday morning and many times at funerals, often at rather tragic funerals. I've journeyed with grieving families and looked out to see them at the funeral, and they can't sing these words. They just can't bring themselves through the tears to sing them. They know that they're true. But they continue to ask for this song to be sung in our church because it's something they needed to be reminded of. They need to remember something about God they know is true and have a hard time feeling. This is another one of the gifts of music. It points us to true reality. We're going to sing a little bit of Blessed Be Your Name now. And I don't know where you're at this morning, but I know that some of you are in seasons of great joy, and some are in seasons of darkness and loneliness. Let this song help you remember God is good, even when we don't understand. So we can sing together, Blessed Be Your Name.
You know, music connects with us on an emotional level, oftentimes when we sing songs. And really, this is the second thing we wanted to point out, is that, you know, why do we pray? Because singing connects our faith with our emotions. And it helps us go deeper. In many ways, you could almost describe it as helping us lean in. It's something that we've talked about when we talk about our faith this year. And when I think about Paul and Silas as they're in prison in the book of Acts, and you know, oftentimes when we think of that story, we often think of these two guys smiling and just being filled with joy in the back of the prison, probably because we had coloring pages that had smiling Paul and Silas. I mean, these guys had been beaten and they had been stripped of all of their dignity, and they were in the deepest part of a Roman jail. You know, my guess is they were filled with fear. They were filled with all kinds of anxiety, thinking to themselves, why are we here right now? Why is this my reality? And yet in the middle of that, they began to sing, and that sort of started to well up inside of them and reminded them. And it also kind of connected them with their emotions. And there's no question that this is something, you know, we all listen to music in different ways, and it touches us. And so the music that we sing about God also connect us emotionally in many ways as well. And I know some people would say, okay, let's be careful here. We talk about emotion. We don't want to become manipulative. We don't want to, sort of push past into some of these places. But the truth is, we can't ignore our emotions either, because God created us as emotional beings, as being, we have joy at times, and we are filled with sorrow at times. And so singing can kind of help us connect with those things that we're feeling. That's kind of the way that God created us. It's part of who we are.
Yeah, I mean, it even, we get examples of this throughout the Bible. In this strange little passage in 2 Kings, we have the story of Elisha. And Elisha was brought before the kings of Israel, Judah, and Edom, and he was asked for a word from God. So he's getting ready to ask God for a word to share with the people, all of the people. And in 2 Kings 3:15, he says, "Bring me a harpist," which is not really what you'd expect.
No.
Right? Music here was serving as a way to calm people down and to allow them to focus, to get their emotions almost in check so that they could hear from God. Yeah. John, my friend John here is a wonderful guitarist. And you, as a guitarist, are often involved in the instrumental music we do, kind of breaks between times of singing? We've talked a little bit about why singing is important, but why do we do instrumental music?
Yeah, I think when you talk about the importance of instrumental music, you kind of have to boil it down to like music is an emotional language, and so singing. When we talk about singing is both emotional and literal, right? It has the literal meaning of the words, but it also uses the emotional language of music the same way that we do in conversation, right? When we talk, kind of the musical elements of our speech add meaning to what we're saying. Pitch, rhythm, tone, inflection, volume. So when we sing together, we're using both that literal and emotional language of kind of music and speech. And I think the way that worship songs are written, they're to kind of be helpful, right? They're to take us to a place where we don't really have to focus entirely on either the literal or the emotional expression of worship. But it gets our mind going. So we're singing verses and choruses. We're singing truth and meaning and messages. And so I think the power of instrumental music is that it takes, like when it's done right, it should take the kind of the place where the emotional language is going, and maintain that message and that feeling. But it removes, like as a worshiper, it removes the literal language. So oftentimes you'll hear worship leaders, say, express your own worship to God. And I think a lot of times as worshipers in the congregation, you think, well, does that mean I need to ad-lib a verse? Like it almost puts the onus on you, like now I need to recreate that literal meaning. But I think for me, as an instrumentalist, and this is part of why, as an instrumentalist, some of the kind of the truest, most intimate times of worship for me have been in instrumentals, is it takes away the literal meaning and allows you as a worshiper to focus on kind of the place that your mind and your spirit has been going through kind of the literal kind of rote component of a worship song. So I think it's a danger for us as instrumentalists to say, okay, because our context is performance art, right? Our context is concerts and the musicians we follow. So the temptation as instrumentalists is to say, okay, now this 16 bars, this is going to be about me, right? And the temptation is to take that and flex your muscle as an instrumentalist and say, I'm going to try the lick that I just learned. I'm going to try to express myself. But I think it's not a performance opportunity. It's a responsibility. Yeah. It's a responsibility not to play for yourself, but to kind of take on the place where the song is going and add to that message, continue the kind of the emotional communication, and then that should free up us all as worshipers to kind of to express worship to God in our own way. Again, not in kind of a literal lyrical kind of way, but even if it's just thinking about where the song's going. Yeah,
and I mean, when I talk to our musicians and our techs, one of the things we're always saying is, how do you best serve the song? How do we best serve what we feel like God needs to say to us, or the ways that we need to hear from God? It's never, when we're up on stage here, it's never about showing off. It's never about trying to play something impressive. It's actually about trying to remove the distractions and allow the truth of the way God is working in us and allow us room to bring our whole selves to it. So thanks, John. I really appreciate that.
And thanks, John. One of the things I just want to reiterate is that, when you see people who are up here on the stage who are singing, playing instruments, every single one of them recognizes their responsibility to help our congregation sing. And they take that very seriously. And it's part of our preparation, and part of our sort of what we do here as a church. And Dave leads this team extremely well. And I just want you to know that all of these guys, thanks, John, and they're just incredible, not only musicians, but also in terms of being thoughtful and leading us in worship. Yeah,
serving really well. Now, this point about music being emotional, I know for some of you, you're right here with me, and for some of you, you think, I don't know, I'm a little bit afraid of that. I'm not a particularly emotional person. I don't really like expressing my emotions. And I'm not saying that, my job as a worship pastor is to try to get everyone to cry on a Sunday morning. That's certainly not what's going on here. There's some part of our cultures that have kind of led some of us to believe that expressing emotion is maybe more feminine than masculine. And I think it's really important to remember that that's not true. Emotions are broad, and when we're talking about emotions, we're talking about a really, really wide range of emotions. We sing not only of God's closeness and intimacy, kind of love and things like that, which for us men might actually be a harder thing for us to connect with, but we also sing of his grandeur and his holiness. We sing of him as creator and sustainer of the whole universe. We sing of Jesus as victor in battle. Music allows us to connect with all of these truths and longings. David, who's the most prolific musician in the Bible, songwriter in the Bible, he was also a fearsome warrior who often sang about God crushing his enemies and God's deep love for his people. Yes, I think music can and should stretch us outside of our own comfort zones and help us to know God and to live lives of worship. But our music should also express the broadest range of human emotions.
Yeah.
Music also connects us with our bodies in a really unique way. I'll let you in on a little secret. We as Canadians, and specifically Southern Ontarians, are internationally renowned as being a very physically reserved audience. That's surprising to you? That's actually a really nice way of saying it. I've heard it said quite differently from some of my performance friends. We like to stand, or even better, sit politely and listen. But I think singing calls us to engage our bodies. This is why we ask you to stand, sometimes to clap, maybe even to sway slightly from side to side. I know it's dangerous. Or, you can tap your foot inside of your shoe if that's your thing. On more than one occasion, I've played for a group of people in Canada as a performer and thought from the stage, I didn't connect at all. They're just giving me blank stares. Only to have someone approach me after the fact and say to me awkwardly, "That was the most moving experience of my life. Thank you," and walk away. Right? So I'm aware as a leader that what I see isn't always what's going on inside of our head and our hearts. But I think it is really important that songs and music connects with our bodies. In the same way that body language is important in a conversation. It helps us to engage, actually, and deepen the experience. Have you ever been studying or working on something and found that standing up or stretching or walking helps you comprehend it, helps you internalize it? Or have you been out for a walk or a jog and found that you've just come across a brilliant solution for a problem that's been plaguing you as you've been sitting at your desk? I think this is part of how we're created, and neuroscience would actually point to the fact that large muscle movement and muscle movement helps our memories, helps us to connect. These things of remembering and touching our emotions, they're helped by the fact that we're engaging our vocal cords. Yeah. We're engaging our arms, we're engaging our legs. God has gifted us and created us in this way so that music affects us. As we gather to sing for our Sunday services, I hope we can all bring the fullness of our experiences, the joy, the frustration, being overwhelmed or confused, our longings and our victories. If we can bring that all and allow music to connect us and our emotions to God's truths. I pray that we will continue to be a church that leans in together and passionately sings together, bringing the fullness of our journeys into contact with the truth of who God is and expressing ourselves with our bodies and our voices. We're going to sing another little part of a song here, and it's a song that's connected with me deeply in the past couple of months. It's a song I've known for a while. It's "Oh, Come to the Altar." And this season for me and our family has been really good. We've been back in Ontario for almost a year now, which is hard to believe. Adjusting to new job, new house, new cities, new schools, new everything. In March, I got to take a trip with Rachel out to Calgary, where I helped lead worship at a big conference with a number of friends who we've played music together for a long time, but we haven't actually seen each other in 10 years. So we were leading at this conference and at this church, and one of the songs we sang was "Oh, Come to the Altar." And it's a song, again, I've been aware of, but something about singing it with good friends and reflecting on kind of where we were at, the ways that God was leading us, the difficulty of change in general in our lives, the reminder that God calls us to come, to bring our full selves to him, to bring all the things we struggle with and all of our joys, the fact that he has saved me. These are truths that I've known, that I've taught about, but they're truths that through this song, starting in March, have found a different way to connect with me. They've rooted in my heart. They've connected with my emotions. Yeah. So we're gonna sing this together.
As Paul and Silas were there in prison, they were singing together, but the thing is they weren't alone. And there were other prisoners who were nearby, and we're told that others were listening, and what we saw as the story moves on is that people were drawn in. And we don't know exactly what happened. God did some incredible things to bring about their freedom. But in the midst of all of that was going on, the prisoners, so that there was an earthquake and the doors were opened, and the jailer who came back was so worried that maybe he had, failed in his duty, that he was about to take his own life. And all of a sudden he hears a voice in the back of the prison saying, "Hey, we're all here." And we don't know exactly what happened in this moment, but what we do know is that these individuals who were there with Paul and Silas were just drawn to what was going on. Maybe it was the fact they were singing in the context of where they were. Maybe it was in the words to their prayers as they were, calling out to God. Maybe it was because they were just moved by the Spirit in some other way. But it's incredible to think that in the context of singing, that it kind of draws us together. It's not just some kind of holdover, something that is stale and irrelevant and a part of some time long ago. The passage that we read from Ephesians, the passage that we read from Colossians, all of these point to this context of what it looks like to live in faith in the context of community. And so often singing becomes a part of that. It helps us with our memory. It connects us with our emotions. And then thirdly, singing connects us to each other, doesn't it?
Yeah. We have the technology now with smartphones and the internet. We can all be in our own spaces, each listening to music that, the music that connects with me, the stuff that I really love on my own headphones. We can do that. So why do we insist on being together and even being subjected to music that we may not love or find too loud or too quiet or don't know the words to yet? I think there are a few good reasons. Both of the passages that I've read from Colossians and Ephesians remind us that there's way more than the action of singing. It calls our hearts and actions into worship, but it places singing together as a really foundational piece of living lives of worship. Yeah. Songs teach us. They inform us about who God is and what he's done. They remind us of our idols and the ways we need to give them up and turn to Jesus as Lord. And they connect to our emotions and plant the truths of God deep within us. Singing is an important part of who we are. It's a gift and a command for our own benefit as disciples of Christ. I've heard the singing we do together at church be compared to dogs being harnessed together on a dog sled team. I got to go dog sledding this winter for the first time. It's an amazing experience. You notice with dogs going together in one place, there's one person leading, and if the dog in the pack doesn't really feel like going along, guess what? It's going anyway, right? Like it's just, everyone goes. I think some of us come to church ready to engage in worship. Some of us love singing. Others show up, we're frazzled. We're frustrated. We're feeling decidedly less musical. There's someone usually leading the pack, someone up here, out front providing direction and compelling others to follow along. And hopefully we get going. Even if you don't want to or you don't fully understand it, it's really hard not to be compelled to join in when you enter a room all doing the same thing. And that's part of the gift of singing. We pull together in the same direction as we sing songs together. The other thing that's beautiful about this is when we're surrounded by people all singing these truths together, we encourage one another. Our stories mingle with our voices, And we know that these truths of God connect deeply, not only as a big concept, but they connect deeply with that friend who's struggling with an illness, or with those who have experienced the joys of new life and a new child, or with those who have recently lost a loved one. Our stories mingle with these songs, and by proclaiming them, by singing them together, we encourage our brothers and sisters. These things that we declare, these songs, they do teach and admonish. They help us know God and point us in that direction. We call one another to refocus on the gospel and the power it has in our lives. I hope that I can sing these truths that we've sung together in the moments in your life where you can't find the voice. And I hope that you can do it for me when I'm there too. Songs connect us in service to one another in a really unique way as well. They can help us become less selfish as we turn from our own preferences.
Yeah, I love that analogy of the dog, sled and dog team. And music can really bring us together, but it's tricky sometimes, isn't it? I'm going to ask Nick to come up and join us, because this is one of those things where, it brings us together, but often music and preferences become things that sort of become a little bit of a wedge for us. So I want to share. Why don't you share with us? This is Nick, and you guys know Nick. Nick is a classically trained viola player, and he also listened to all kinds of different music growing up. That's quite different than what we would hear in the church. But what was it like for you, your first time to hear music in the church?
Yeah.
And then how do you what do you do with music that just doesn't kind of fit with what you like?
Well, I never knew anything about God until I was like 20. So when I became a Christian, it was at a point in my life where I was listening to bands like, I don't know, August Burns Red or A Day to Remember, Blink-182, all these like metal or punk bands. So it's just this really energetic, aggressive, kind of fast music. And on the other side of the coin, I was going to school for viola and performance and orchestra music. So I'm listening to and analyzing and critiquing people playing music like Beethoven, one of the most brilliant and most creative composers who's ever lived. So to come to church, where church music was totally new for me when I first heard it when I was 20, and it wasn't fast and aggressive, and it wasn't complex. It was really simple and kind of mellow, and I really didn't like that when I first came. And to add to that, I just saw these lyrics on screens where I was like, I don't know any of these melodies. I don't know what they're saying. And I really didn't like it at first. And I was pretty open about that with my friends. And I guess over time, I kept coming back, and eventually the songs started getting a little bit more familiar. I'd recognize a melody at some point. I'd be like, oh yeah, Lay Me Down, I know that one. Yeah. I can sing along to that. And over time, as I started engaging with these songs and styles that were just unfamiliar and not really what I would choose to listen to, I started to realize that I'm singing these awesome truths about God, these things in these songs and the lyrics that encourage and teach us amazing things that are true about God and about us and how we can live these lives of faith. So looking back on it, I kind of realized when I was just sitting there just kind of with a pouty face for so many years, because I didn't like the style or because I didn't think the musicians were McGill University quality or whatever. I was
Fair.
that was what was in my head, to be honest. I started realizing I was missing out on so many opportunities week after week to engage with some songs that were really awesome. And I started missing out on being able to sing these songs with people. Instead of just sitting in my own head judging everything, I could have been singing songs with amazing people who want to live faithful lives to God. And then I started leading worship, and I started to really see the power of hearing a united church singing a song together. And that moved me in so many amazing ways and encouraged me. And I'm really happy I kind of put those preference things aside for the sake of these songs, because I love them now. I choose to listen to worship music now. I still listen to all the other stuff, but yeah, that's just how I've changed.
Yeah, and I also remember you sharing early on when Nick came. I remember you taking home a hymnal, and kind of, you know, with his classical training, he was able to read through all the music, and it was kind of neat to kind of hear his experience through that too. Yeah, fun stuff. Thank you. Thanks for sharing. I'm going to invite the choir to come back up, so they're going to come up and join us as we get ready to close. But what we're going to do, just before we close our service, so we're going to sing a song at the end, but I want to sing something first that just is going to, it's a song that a lot of people know really well, and it's an opportunity for us to have a little bit of fun. And here's why. It's not a song about God, but it is a great reminder of what he does to us in the context of kind of bringing people together. This is one of those songs that when you sing it, I hope that you pay attention to how it makes you feel, because all of a sudden, you know, when I hear these words, I start kind of looking at people around me, puts a smile on my face, and reminds us that music kind of brings us together. The truth is that we know ultimately it's God who is the one who we can rely on. He is the one we need to be focusing on. But one of the ways God accomplishes this is by using each other, using us together. And so we're going to sing this song. Pay attention to how it affects you, and you can sing along if you know it.